Don't start iterating for the sake of iteration. I know sometimes it may not feel like you're doing that, but I've seen a lot of situations where people just want to make improvements to their product based off of just a collection of feedback. And the effort that you put into these iterations should be very scientific and strategic. So every iteration should be intentional. You should have data to back it up, and you want to test the iteration before you overhaul your whole thing. I'll give you just a simple example. So, if you're placing Google Ads, and eventually you will be for your business, that's why I want to give you this example. You're not going to know what keywords actually work. You're going to have a set of assumptions around what keywords are effective. What you need to do then is put those keywords into your first campaign and see what the performance of those keywords are. And then once you see the performance, then you could actually decide which keywords are working better, and then you activate those similar keywords versus the ones that aren't working. And then it's a constant cycle of kind of iteration and improvement until you see a few that really work well, and then you want to invest heavily in those few words so that you can maximize the advertising dollars. And for your product or service strategy, it's no different. You're going to get a lot of feedback on different things, and then one or two things are really going to resonate with your potential customer, and those are the ones that you're going to want to invest heavily on. As you look at some of the strategies in this slide, I want you to think about three buckets, because I do think that the key iterations really happen in these three buckets as you continue to learn more through the feedback that you get. First is you're going to gain a new set of assumptions. You started with a set of assumptions in the beginning, and then through all of the feedback, doing more market research, you're going to develop a more broader or even a more nuanced set of assumptions that's going to inform your product development. Second, you have to develop for a competitive advantage. Change is hard in education, and getting people to stop what they're doing and put a new thing in place is very risky. And so you have to be able to show that your product or service is an absolute competitive advantage. And if you can't figure out how to do that, then it's going to be a really hard adoption cycle. And then finally, just really addressing the customer need. I've given you this example before, but I'll reiterate it. A lot of people want to and recognize that there's a need for leadership coaching at all levels, but it's not that there needs to be better leadership coaching, but the challenge is how do you create time for that leadership coaching to take place? And so the problem is obvious that everybody needs more leadership coaching, but the real underlying problem as to why the adoption doesn't happen is the time factor. And so some of the things that you might consider as you develop this is trying to figure out like how to make that experience a little bit better. One of the things that surprised me as an early entrepreneur is the amount of understanding someone can get just by looking at your key metrics and your financials. And what I found is that when someone's looking at a lot of different businesses, whether it's a product or a service, you start seeing trends in these key metrics that inform how the business is operating and how effective the products are. And so, because of those trends and that pattern, people that don't really know the essence of your particular product or business can assimilate how your business is running, whether it's running effectively, whether you're getting traction, whether it's expected to grow. There's so many things that someone can tell by the key metrics. And so one of the most important things that you could do is start to understand those key metrics early on. And there's, depending on your business, there's just a lot of resources that you could tap into that will tell you whether you're on the right track based off of those key metrics. And that goes, those things might include things like uh, gross margin, customer retention rates, cost of acquisition, usage rates. There's just so many things depending on the type of business. And what I would recommend is, as you start considering key metrics and such, just go into the educator to entrepreneur community and share some of the questions you have, and we'll provide you with some recommended resources to help you understand, depending on the stage of where your idea is at and the product or service. We could recommend some key metrics that might suit you at the stage that you're at. One of the challenges you'll experience is, as an early stage entrepreneur, is that you're going to be limited in resources. That's both on funds and in time. And because you're spending time trying to do sales and product development and operations. And so depending on the time of year, a lot of those things are going to be in play at the same time. The other thing to recognize is, especially when we're selling into school systems, there are kind of peak times that the schools operate where they're considering new programs and initiatives and products. And so all of those things kind of come into play and can crunch your resources quite a bit. And so that's why we're just reinforcing that as you think about where you want to invest and iterate on your product or service, just make sure that you're doing it as efficiently and smartly as possible, so that you're not wasting time, and you could spend time in some of the other critical things, which is, trying to get more people to know about your product or solution, and gaining more adoption through sales. Now it's your turn. Consider some of the iterations that you want to make on your prototype and figure out what you want to bring to market next. Of the changes that you're considering, which of them are changes that will improve the solution to the problem that you're trying to address? Which of the changes are going to really differentiate you from the competitors and give you that competitive edge that you need? And finally, which of these features might make it easier for somebody to purchase your product or increase the size of the market that you're going after? So as you think about this, share some of your ideas in the community. I think sharing these ideas in the community will give you even better feedback and more inputs, and we could respond to it a little bit better as well in the community, so that everybody can learn and grow on how to make improvements to their product or solution.